You're welcome once again to Our Ladies Abuja meetup. So, just a little bit info about us. We are a small group, newly formed, and we have 7 co-organizers. We have Bilikisu, Queenette, Zinat, myself, Ifoma, Mabel, Abiodu, and Imseka. We try to organize meetup where and to engage our local group here in Abuja in Nigeria. So today, it's a special day for us. We have in our midst Dr. Cedric, who will be taking us on Level Up Your Data Visualization with ggplot. So Dr. Cedric is an independent data visualization professional, consultant, and a designer with a focus on effective and engaging communication. He helps clients worldwide bridge the gap between data science and design. As a prominent voice in the R and diverse communities, Dr. Cedric has shared his expertise at major conferences, including the Post-it conference. I'm sure we all know about that. One is coming up, Data to Speak and Outlier, and has led tailored workshops for organizations like Fannie Mae, Supercell, and Charity. He's currently developing the interactive learning experience ggplot Uncharted together with Jan Holtz. You're welcome, Dr. Cedric.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
for going to speak to us. I will stop sharing now so you can
Okay,
start.
so I take over. Thanks for the kind introduction and thanks for having me. Yeah, delighted to talk about ggplot and about our course. So I'm going to show you a few examples. I hope you all can hear me well and see my slides. So if there's any questions, feel free to address them in the chat, I guess. And if there's something directly related to the current slide content, I'm happy also to take questions right away. Okay, so yeah, we are talking about, I call it now Uncharted Waters based on our course name. So first a bit about me, but thanks for the nice introduction. I don't have to say much more. So I'm focusing on data communication, but covering the full data science approach. I'm a trained ecologist, computational ecologist or biologist, and then I became an independent consultant. So I'm doing the analysis workflow things you likely know as well, like the data wrangling and the data analysis and using reproducible codes and documents for it. And then I love to focus on the design and communication aspect. So I'm also mostly using R for that, but also some other tools. And finally, also I'm doing a lot of training and consulting, so one-to-one mentoring, but also larger groups and such as the PositConf workshops, for example. And everyone going there, I'm not joining this time, but if someone is going there, greetings to everyone. So how it all started, I was running some experiments, simulation experiments doing my PhD, and I had to visualize these results. And I was kind of like fed up with the R-base plotting utilities. And then I discovered ggplot, and these are some of my PhD visualizations I prepared for papers, my thesis, and slides. And I really fell in love combining the data science coding aspect with design and yeah, colors and fonts. And as you can see, spent quite some time on developing figures. And the moment I handed in my thesis, I started participating in some data visualization challenges. You may know the Tidy Tuesday project. This was the first one I was regularly participating in for quite some time, and also some other challenges like the upcoming 30-day chart challenge we have initiated, or I've initiated together with Dominic Royer 6 years ago already. So the sixth edition is happening this April. And then I started working for some clients, also some interactive web-based reporting and interactive visualizations, but a lot of that is still static images. Also, as you can see in the lower, also printed stuff as reports. So some examples here include a report about QN in Germany, where we have this large unfoldable visualization. This was mostly generated with ggplot and then fine-tuned with some graphic software. Together with Georgios Karamanis, we had the pleasure to publish a graphic science page in the Scientific American magazine. This was also fully done with ggplot2. except for a bit of editorial touches by the team of the Scientific American. And then I'm also pretty proud to be the developer and designer of these population pyramids. These are also all art-driven. So we released two reports together with the Bundesinstitut für Bevölkerungsforschung, so an institute investigating the population demographics and dynamics in Germany. Okay, so to the topic of today, we're talking about ggplot2, and I'm pretty sure most of you will know that already. So I'm not going to talk that much about the basic stuff or the kind of what the package description is about. So the important part here is it's for creating graphics, and it's following the grammar of graphics by Wilkinson, and we will see how this is implemented in ggplot on a few slides. To get a bit of a feeling of the crowd, I also want to hear you or see you. So I prepared a little poll where you can react to with some reactions in the Zoom menu. So the first question would be like, what's the level of ggplot you when you're using it? So are you a regular user? Then clap, please. If you're using it from time to time, a thumbs up. If you're currently starting a celebration, and if you've never heard about it or used it, please. The surprising. So I'm not sure, are they showing up here? I hope they would. Okay. We have someone regularly using it, someone else as well. So a lot of regular users here, except for the quiet people. Okay. That's what I see at least from time to time users. So I'm going to cover a bit of the basics too. A beginner. Hi, Muhammad. Murat as well. So I'm going to cover also a bit of the basics, but then there will be also some more advanced stuff. But as usual, this is a showcase talk, so pick up whatever you find interesting, and if it makes you get started with ggplot, you're very welcome to do so. Okay, next question. If you're a user already, how do you use ggplot2? Do you create all the code to create the full figure, or do you combine it with other tools? If you're still a beginner, you're likely still figuring out how to build plots per se. And maybe there are also the AI LLM people who just ask around until it works. Okay. Ah, Nicolas, perfect, Nipuni, the expert users here. Some thumbs up. Okay. Okay. Happy to welcome you all. Um, if you want to provide some feedback or if you want to quickly have some short introduction round, if you use it in combination with other tools, why? If you want, share it in the chat or quickly speak up. I'm always curious because I mean, we are building this course, which I'm now going to talk about on the next slides, because we want people to achieve high-level publication-ready figures with code alone. But to be honest, I'm also using some other tools, as I mentioned. Okay. So, ggplot, short introduction, nevertheless, is something you can use for the explorative part of the data visualization process, like the visual data exploration. This is an illustration by Alison Horst. You may know her and her artwork already. So here you can see like the default ggplot corporate colors, I would already say, with the gray background. So many people can by now directly see that this is a ggplot visualization or made with ggplot. So this is just some examples from the help page for the package, and these are more the regular plots. And then you can also move beyond that. So likely when going from the explorative to the explanatory part where you want to share your work and your findings, you may combine it with more uncommon geoms, for example. You may apply some theming or maybe also make an animation or some interactive graphics. Quickly looking at the chat. Yeah, someone mentioning Figma and Photoshop are sometimes faster, and that's exactly the case. So even though I know it all very well, there's definitely some steps which are easier to achieve. It's always like the ratio, obviously, of doing it manually versus coding it. So what's more efficient? So for my client work, I definitely have to decide on that factor, based on that factor as well. And sometimes it's also fun, obviously, to draw things and play around directly if you get sick of coding it. Okay, but we will focus on code alone today. and going to focus on these, yeah, not sure if it's masterpieces, but kind of creating high-level visualizations with code alone. And I want to share a few tricks with you and provide also a short overview on the basics. Oops. So these are then is a collection I use for quite a while already, mostly coming from the Study Tuesday challenges and other challenges. Some are by me, some are by others, like this generative art, which is also created with ggplot2 by Thomas Lynn Patterson, for example. It's also some pixel visualization by Georgios, or Jake visualized the decrease in tree cover, I guess it's over time by drawing a tree. So these are also things you could do with ggplot. So often I get into questions about how do I create those, and of course you are aware of all the blog posts, the YouTube videos, the Stack Overflow questions, and the other tools which can help you. Um, we could also look at, for example, the Tidy Tuesday visualizations, and if there's something you find and want to apply to your data, you can search for the code. People usually share that, and also other R codes, obviously. But I sat together with Jan at some point, or he came to me and asked me if he want to build a ggplot2 interactive learning experience where people can, yeah, use a web page and use an interactive sandbox where they can run the code directly. So it's not just watching videos or going through written text. It's a combination of a lot of things. I want to show you quickly how the page looks like. So this is just a landing page. Jan was building the page, and I think it's put together pretty nicely. And we are still developing that. We're just wrapping up module 4 out of 6. So here are the modules. We start with the foundations of ggplot2, then move on to the customization part, where we use theming and the custom colors and things like that. Then we have a dedicated module on adding annotations, labels, titles, and so on. And this is the one we currently wrapped up, one on plot composition, where we talk about patchwork and facets. And then there's these upcoming modules which we aim to finalize soon for spatial data and interactivity. So I think for the link, of course, I can share that if the chat lets me. So it's ggplot2uncharted.com. I had some issues uploading my slides just this minute, but I will also share the slides with you if you like. Just have to figure out, hope I typed it right. Um, And here's a video, short video we kind of like shared with people how this works with all these interactive elements. So we have data views. Here's the sandbox where you can directly type code, and this is built with WebR. So we also had some issues with some less common packages, for example, but mostly it worked very great, and people can use it, and it seems to work for everyone. We have these tabs with additional information to add some more details, but keep the lessons kind of short. And then also Jan usually builds some widgets like this one for colors, where people can play around and hopefully also learn something on the way. And then at the end of each module, we have some challenges where people can share Discord and ask questions. And this one is the reproduction challenge, where we shared a few visualization and asked people to build something similar. So this is rather advanced already. But we also have the starter module as well, and also some bonus lessons which inform people how to use these things, how to install R locally and do some data wrangling and stuff like that. Okay, enough of the advertisement here. So I'm going to show you a few examples. By the way, so the course is for subscription, but there are also free lessons. So even if you don't want to subscribe, you may want to check out the free lessons. They are clearly labeled. And also we provide some discounts. So if you reach out to us, if you're feeling like this is way too expensive for you to cover, then we are also happy to talk with you. Okay, some ggplot in action. So let's jump in. First things first, we have to set up our system. So if you run it locally, as with any other R package, you have install and then load it with a library call. And then after doing that, you have a function and some data sets available, which are then loaded by the package. ggplot2 is also part of the tidyverse. So if you like to use the tidyverse package collection, you can also install that, which installs some more packages for handling data imports, data cleaning, and so on. So this is what we are going to build first, like still the basics, showcasing a few of the components you can use to build a ggplot or to build a graphic with ggplot2. This is a heat map of some Simpsons data covering the first 21 seasons. So it's not the complete data set, but it's one of the example data sets we are using in our course. And I will walk you through how to build this now to basically cover a bit of the basics. Obviously, this is a large system, and there's lots of detailed functions for doing a specific thing. So this is just giving you an idea how to combine those components. So first we need the data. So this is, as mentioned, data from the course. So we stored it on our web page. So we have this data view and you can always then directly load it. So this allows people to play around in the sandboxes, but also locally directly without kind of like some downloading issues or whatever. Then I'm using the dplyr package with the glimpse function here to show you a bit of the data. It's not all what we use here, so I think the names itself will make sense when we draw our first plot. So each ggplot starts with the ggplot command. So here in line 1, where the first argument is the data set, we stored it in an object called Simpsons. So that's our tibble or data frame object, which we then can pass to ggplot. And then the second argument is the mapping, where we define what's drawn on the x-axis here, which is the number in the season, so the episode. And then y is the season itself. So we get this regular grid or non-unregular grid here in this case because the numbers of episodes in each season differ. And then we need a layer, something which we want to use or we choose to visualize our data with. And in this case, we use gmtile, which draws a rectangle. And then we have another aesthetic call. We could also merge them, where we actually define one column of our data, which is then used for the fill color of our rectangles. So here you see that the average IMDb rating, which we are plotting here, ranges from something below 5 to something above 9 here. So we directly get this ggplot corporate blue gradient, which I'm not really a huge fan of. So we're going to tweak that. And we're also going to tweak a few more things. So what I don't like is that we have not all the seasons numbered here. I also don't like that we start at the bottom, for example, and go to the top. I find this not very intuitive. So let's work on that on the next slide. So the first thing is drawing all the numbers here, and we can use a quick trick here. We can just turn it into a factor, and when we use a factor in that case, and this is what you usually want when drawing a heat map, or often want it when you're drawing a heat map, you can just wrap these columns into the factor function, which turns them into a factor. So you don't have to adjust your data set here. We can do this directly when passing the column name. And this now draws all the numbers because now these are categorical and ggplot's internal logic then plots a label for each. You could also use now for the more advanced users the forcats package to reverse the order here in the season. I want to show you another trick. We can also use a scale function. So the scale functions work on the representation of these aesthetics. So here we are addressing the y-axis. So with the scale y, we're going to address our season axis. And then we can set the limits to ref, R-E-V, or reverse. It's a shortcut here, and then it just flips the axis here. And then I'm using another scale, the scale fill, to address the fill color of these rectangles. So here I'm using the distiller function, which is provides the R color brewer colors or the color brewer's colors in R on ggplot. So I can specify one of the color sets. I'm using the red, yellow, blue one here. Then I can specify the directions. So should be 9 be encoded as reddish or bluish. And I set the NA value, so these NAs where we don't have the IMDb rating, but they are listed in our table are not shown anymore. I switch back to the previous slide, so you can see that some of the seasons of 28 are colored gray here. This is because they don't have a value. So inside the functions for colors and fills, for example, I can usually control that and set the color, whatever I want. So sometimes you want to have it red, for example, if you're drawing scatter plot, you might want to highlight those points which don't have a specific value or belong to a certain group or don't belong to a certain group. Okay, and the next steps is adding some labels here. They are cut off now because I showed you a white format. I will also show the final white format visualization again. So there's the labs
Okay, let's
function,
go.
which you can use to add all kinds of things. So you can add a title here. What we do here is subtitle, the caption, which goes to the bottom. We can override the names of the specific aesthetics we are using. So we can override the x-axis label, we can title, we can override the y-axis title, and we can also directly address the title of our fill legend here. With \n, I create a new line, so I'm kind of saving some space because otherwise we would get a lot of white space to the right here. Okay, this already looks pretty clean. We still have the grayish background color, and we also need some more hierarchy, and there are some visual tweaks, design tweaks I would like to apply. But before I do that, I store this current version you've just seen before in an object. So you can also store your ggplot code. This is not the graphic, but it's the code or the object to create the graphic in something. So I call it just S0 for Simpsons first version or zero version. It's not the final version yet, but then I don't have to show you all the code every time again. So we basically keep this code in mind. We have set up the ggplot with the x, y, and fill definitions for our columns, and then tweaked the y-axis, the colors, and the labels. Um, there's a question on arrow. That's part of the font, but I think all modern fonts by now have an arrow. If not, then you end up with these empty rectangle. You may know that when using custom fonts or using some symbols which don't work. So in early times or in older times, you had to basically use some expressions or whatever to make that work. But by now, you can just copy the symbol. So basically, you just search for right arrow, left arrow, and then you can pick from many, or you could also, if you want to use the ggtext, so for the more advanced people, if you're using the ggtext package for rendering your theme elements anyway, then you can also use the HTML shortcodes. This is sometimes faster if you know them by heart, but usually you can also, there are many pages which provide all the symbols that are available in general. Yeah, so I just added them. I can go back. I just added them to the to the label string. So here I just pasted them in. Okay, and so now I can use the S0 to start from, and then I'm going to store my final version of this Simpson seed map in the S1 object because we're going to continue with that on some later slides. So what I'm doing now is I use one of the complete themes. So this is built in ggplot. There are a few which you can use. I'm choosing the theme minimal because I don't want to many theme elements here because the heat map itself has a clear boundary and we don't need many elements here. In the theme minimal, you can directly specify a new font. So if I switch back at 4, you see that the font has changed. One which is installed on my system. So you need to install it usually if you're running it locally or if you're working on a workbench, you have to install it there. Um, so with the base family, I can override basically all the text elements in my plot, which are from the theme. It's not working if you're using a GM text, for example, then you have to specify it there as well. And then after setting this complete theme, I'm overwriting or modifying this theme by addressing a few of these things. So this is the more advanced stuff. It's nothing you should kind of basically now understand in detail. It's more like the idea of you add a complete theme and then you can address particular things if you're not happy with it. I'm definitely a perfectionist here. So I'm usually taking quite some time to do this. But there are also quite some nice themes out there which are provided by extension packages, for example. So here, for example, I'm using the element blank function to remove the grid, so I don't have these grid lines for the episodes which are not existent here. I'm adjusting the axis title a bit, moving that one to the left and that one to the top. I'm adding some spacing here for between the legend title and the actual legend. Then I'm setting a different font, this basically for the display here for the header with the plot title element text, and then tweaking the subtitle and caption as well. I think I also have some highlights here. So these are all the element text adjustments I do. And then finally, I do the plot title position and plot caption position. I align them with the left border and the right border. This is also something which was definitely annoying me for quite a while, but this was added with ggplot2 version 3, I guess. So by default, your titles are aligned with your actual panel, not with it itself. So as mentioned, I'm a perfectionist, but that's an easy win. So you can add it quickly to improve your plot a bit, I think. Makes it a bit easier to read and looks a bit more professional in most cases. Okay, so quick walkthrough of how you can use ggplot. So again, just one example here. Many other examples are out there. You will find some free resources to build all kinds of chart types. Also, Jan, for example, has the rgraph gallery where he shares the code for all kinds of chart types with even some reasoning why or why you shouldn't use it and things like that. So I hope this was already informative and some new tricks in there or some refresher on some of the things you can do here. Okay, so now we're moving on to some more advanced stuff, to some tricks. I shared also before on LinkedIn a few things on Blue Sky, what I'm going to talk about as well. So there are two topics which I cannot cover fully in depth, but so I've chosen one example for both of them and then just some links to the others. The first thing is guide the view or guide the viewer. This is a phrase I'm using quite long now for all my database courses usually, which is about adding annotations, call out things which help people to understand your graphic, especially if it's static, especially if it's printed or just shared with the world in a way where you can't interact with people. I think this is the most important thing to do when creating a data visualization. I usually, I know there are some researchers also here. I also kind of like every time I'm talking to researchers, being a researcher myself, inviting them to add more of these kind of things to really highlight what's the key findings. And I'm also very happy to see more and more of these techniques applied in scientific journals, but also beyond that, obviously, when sharing on social media, on your blog, whatever, with your boss in an email. Context is always good. So here I've added a few things which I will showcase you now step by step. One is we didn't talk about the precise um, visualization or findings here. So what we see here actually is that we have quite some blue colors here in the upper part, and then the Simpsons IMDb ratings decreased quite a lot, around 7 to even 4.5 here for one episode. So we want to highlight this. This is a reference also to the famous measles visualization, vaccination visualization, some of you may know. So I found this pretty striking, the pattern here, and I found it also kind of, yeah, interesting to make the reference to that graphic. So what I've done is I added this separator line with a text to basically show the difference between these two groups, or this transition here. Then I added labels to the 5% of the best and 5% of the worst ratings. So you can see that there are two very badly rated episodes in the upper part, but a lot more down here and vice versa. So there's no blue color labeled here. So none of the good episodes in the lower part actually belong to the best rated episodes. Then I added a call out here, which is rather complex. So we have this box around the tile. We have this arrow, and then we have the text explaining what's going on or which episode this is. And then a tiny small detail here to basically say, well, this is not the latest data with a fun take. So lots of things to add. So I will walk you through step by step on the next slides. And as mentioned, I think this is pretty important, not in like strictly, and you can disagree and agree what kind of data to label. Some people may prefer to label all the cells. I found this a bit too busy. I think this guides the view, but could be that people want to know what exactly this rating here is. So there are tons of decisions to be made. So this is maybe also one thing I can transfer here. It's like you making the decisions, and some others might disagree. But I think if you have a good reasoning why you're doing that, and obviously you don't want to harm with your visualization, everything is basically allowed. And there are different opinions on these things. But yeah, just inviting you to play around with these things. Okay, and as this is so, or I consider this so important, and Jan as well. Now my slides don't work anymore. What's going on? Oh, okay, we were stuck somehow. Seems. Okay, I have some lags here, so I continue talking and wait for it to recover. Don't go too much into the code yet. So because we find this very important, we can like, as I showed you, spend a full module or have written a full module on these topics. Okay, here we go. And we kind of like create a lot of examples and exercises on that topic in module 3 of our course. So here's just some other things which we cover. So you also see that the Simpsons heat map was one of our main examples for the annotation lesson. So you can, I think that one is this one for free? I'm not sure now. So I'm not going to link you to that. Okay, so we can now use our S1 object, so the pure heat map without all the annotations to continue from there. So we are going to add the labels for the best and worst episodes here with a GM text. So these labels are connected to your data. So we are using a layer here, so we can address directly a column in the data set. So we are going to use GM text, which, as the name says, draws some text label. And then because we don't want to label all of this, so if you would not specify the data here, for example, you would create a full view of all the average ratings. So if that's what you want, basically a heat map table, then you don't need to add line 4. If you want to kind of subset your data, you can use the subset function from base R or the filter data from dplyr, for example, to just pass a subset of a data set. You can also make this dynamically if you're piping it in. Here I'm using the Simpsons object. So I figured out these thresholds before, like the 5% thresholds being larger than 8.6 and smaller than 6.3 here. This is also something you could obviously do dynamically. I didn't want it to add too much here for the member of our course. And then we have the mapping, where we have to specify a label. So what needs to be printed? I'm using here the format function because these are floating numbers. So I want to keep this to, and now I wonder, to 2 digits. And now I'm confused myself, but it seems to work. And I'm not sure if we need that actually. I'm pretty sure there's only 1 digit, so this might be just a leftover code. So you can either pass a column, or you can also, again, mess with that column and modify it as you like. And then in line 6, I'm basically just tweaking the labels. So I'm increasing the size, I make them bold, and I'm using my main font here, my base family I've set in my theme before. So this is quite solid already. You can add that with one layer. As again, if you don't want to have a subset, it's becoming even more simple. You just need to specify the label, which links to one of your columns, and then you can tweak it or not if you want. What I dislike here now from a data visualization perspective is that some of the labels are pretty dark on the extreme values. So next I want to fix that. So we want to have an accessible visualization and maybe also these contrast rich things, right? These are those with the lowest contrast, at least for the label. But we could even use that for guiding the eye of the viewers. So in the mapping call here, I'm adding another aesthetic. You have seen the fill before. Now I'm using the color. So there's both or only one, depending on which geometry you are using. The rectangles have an outline color and an inner fill. The text only has a color because, yeah, it's just lines. And here I'm specifying again the values I want to use, but this is now generating a true false, right? So it's checking if the IMDb rating value for a particular cell is greater than 8.2 or smaller than 5.5, or it's between those two values. So this returns true or false. So if I would draw the legend now, which I already have removed, I would see a true false legend. And because it's true false, I get two values, one value for the extreme values and one for the middle values. And then I can address them or overwrite them with the scale color manual, where I now know that these are the ones which are in the middle range. So I turn them into a dark gray, and the others are becoming white. Yeah, exactly. Good questions. We didn't dive deep into the data. So the IMDb rating is a column in our data set. So all the values we used here, so the number in season, the season number, and the IMDb rating are part of our data. And we have one average IMDb rating per combination of the other two variables. Exactly. Mm, If you had multiple entries and you want to plot and show the median or average, can you calculate it inside of ggplot? Yes, you can do that. You can use a statistical transformation. It might be a bit more difficult depending on how much you've used ggplot before and if AI can handle that, or you find a relevant matching answer on Stack Overflow or whatever. So it's possible. I think the shortcut is for most people to calculate a summary table first, but you can also do that directly in ggplot. Yeah. You also need to be careful. It's actually a good hint or note on that. If I would have if my data would have multiple values when drawing the tiles and filling them, I would only see the last value in my table, right? Because it would draw multiple colors on top of each other. So heat maps can also easily go wrong. So you really have to check that you only have one count per row column combination. Okay. And because this now returns true and false, I can define the colors for that. And then I'm using the guide equals none here to remove that legend because I don't want to show it now, realizing that feel free to if you have the code or if you do something similar to also plot the legend to understand what's going on if this is not really clear to you right now. But basically creating two categories on the fly and then saying which color they should have. Okay, the next two annotations are oops, trying to mute. Maybe someone else could. Okay. Um, the next annotations are the highlighting for the worst episode and our data stop here basically. So I'm using the annotate function because these labels are now not tied to our data set. So the annotate allows you to draw any geom. You can also use with the usual geom underscore or stat underscore functions, but basically unrelated to your data. So you can on the fly draw something which is yeah not related to your data at all. So here I'm deciding to use the text geom again. So basically this is a geom underscore text, but not related to our data. So we don't need to have one label for each of the cells and so on and so on. So it simplifies things when you really want to place something on top of your actual data visualization. So usually specify the geom and then you have basically access or you need to specify the required arguments for that geom. So these can change depending on what you use. You have seen before that if you're using a text geom, you need a label. So I'm passing a vector of two labels here, the one with the Lisa goes gaga and the one with the end of our data. Again, pasting an arrow here and adding some line breaks with the \n. And then I also need a position. So I'm specifying an coordinate or an xy coordinate for the first text and for the second text. This is a bit tricky here now because we have a categorical y-axis here. Basically, we are counting the y's from the bottom, so it's not directly glued to the label here on the left, but basically it's the number, the row number from the bottom, just if someone wonders here. So 1.7 means basically here in the first row, 2.8 means around the second, third row. Okay, this doesn't look good yet, so we're going to going to modify that. Um, okay. Getting arguments available, which the geometric layer also has. So we can now justify our text. I'm using the horizontal justification 0, which makes it left aligned. So you see now this nicely lines up with my with the end of the data here in the lower part. This also now lines up nicely with the last episode. And also makes reading a bit more easier because left aligned text is usually what we want, at least in yeah, left to right reading cultures. Um, the line height I can adjust, so I just wanted to decrease the spacing here. I again using my corporate font or the font I'm using for all the plot. And then because I have two labels, I can also specify dedicated things for them. So here I say the first one, the Lisa Goes Gaga, should be bold, but the other one should be just plain. So not bold, not italic. I can specify the colors. Here I'm using one of the predefined colors in a hex code, so both works. So this is becoming red like this color, and this is just gray, a note. So this is a call out, this is a note basically. And then I'm also passing two different sizes to these labels. And to make this work, you see that the text is not fully visible. Another neat trick here, you can address the coordinate system. So we have a Cartesian coordinate system. This is the default. You have basically these spans XY coordinates. And there's an argument which is called clipping, or the clip argument, which you can turn off. It's on by default, which means everything which is drawn outside the actual data area, it's clipped off, as you've seen before. But if I go for clip off, the text extends in the legend area where we anyway have this white space. So this is pretty handy if you want to draw outside of the panel, usually for text, sometimes also for other things. And now I'm going to use the annotate function again without going too much into detail here now. I'm drawing a rectangle where we specify the minimum and maximum in both directions. I'm basically making it transparent, so I just get the outline of the rectangle, which is black then. And in the next step, I'm going to add an arrow. So I use the annotate function again with the curve geom. Here I need to start and an endpoint for both x and y. I can again pass a color, which is now the same as the one of my text. I can even control the curvature and angle, like should it be a regular symmetric curve or not, and how much should it be curved. And then with the arrow function here, this is something more complicated, but you can directly grab that from the ggplot help on the GM curve, basically, where they show you examples how to draw these arrows. And here I'm saying I want to have a specific length of my arrowhead and a specific type of my arrowhead. And now we're going to look at this, and this is the box we are going to draw here. So this is some fine tuning, obviously, the exact positions and so on. So this is definitely something which eats some time, which might be faster to do in a vector software, graphics vector software. But if you do that multiple times, or if you kind of basically want to do that with code alone, or you need it for an automatic report or a Shiny app or whatever, then you maybe want to code it. Okay, I see we're getting a bit late here, but I would love to show you a few more things. So is it fine to extend a bit?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to keep some time for questions, definitely. So let's see. Maybe I will just showcase the other things, but not go too much into detail with the code. But I forgot there's a final annotation we wanted to add here, which is this line. And I want to show you an extension package, which is not that brand new anymore, but I'm not sure if many have heard of it yet. It's the GM text path package, which allows you to basically draw curved text or basically draw a GM together with some text. And you see it already here in action. And the nice thing is that it exactly breaks the lines, for example, to make room for the labels. You can also move them above the line, for example. But here it's exactly what I want. I want a line going there, then having a label, and then a continued line. So usually I would do that, and I think in the course we have done that because we hadn't introduced that package yet. I would use three annotate calls, or basically three annotation layers. the first line, the label, and the second line, which is a lot of fine-tuning here again. So the GM text path makes this much more easy. So you see it's just basically 4 lines of code. How I space it, you could also write it in 1 line of code. So there's the GM text H line in that case. So I want to draw a horizontal line with text. It draws both. So I specify the y-intercept as it's a horizontal line. I just need one value, which is exactly here. Again, counting the rows from the bottom to the top. So it's 19.5, not 9.5. And then I pass the label and it just draws the line and puts the label in the middle. So that's not perfect yet. It's not the same as our style here with the font, and it's overlapping with one of our labels here, but we can fix that easily in the next step. So I'm setting now a different font here, so title font. I again make it bold. So in GMs, it's font face, not face. As in the theming, this is a kind of a small thing which can basically go wrong, the different namings here. And then I'm adjusting the position on the horizontal to move it a bit more to the right so it doesn't overlap with our 5.1 cell label here. And that's it. That's a walkthrough for all these annotations. Quite some variety of different annotations. So we have data related with GM text with the subset for the best and worst ratings. We have these GM text path extension trick, and then we have annotate functions with text curve and rectangle geoms. Okay. There are some other packages, or the GM text path package we already covered. Some things I want to note here is the ggRepel package for avoiding overlapping labels and cutoff labels. The ggforce package, which has a great mark function, geomark
Can
something.
I ask a question or
In,
a
in a
question
second,
till the end?
yeah. And the ggAnnotate package, which I will quickly showcase. Yeah, Kenneth, I think. Do you have a question?
Yes, I do have a
Yes.
question.
Okay,
Okay,
sure.
so in the last code you wrote, the one with geom text line,
Mm-hmm.
I see that the y-intercept on the code is on 19.5, but on the graph we saw it
Mm-hmm.
at between 9 and 10.
Yeah, this is because here's a number and this is a factor. So we turned in the beginning, not going to go back on the slides, but in the beginning, I turned my labels here, the column which is numeric in the data, I turned it into a factor, which makes it categorical. Like basically, it's not 1, 2, 3 as numbers, but it's 1, 2, 3. So we still are navigating in this Cartesian coordinate system, which starts with 0, 0 at the very bottom left. So because of that, I need to count the rows to the top, and it's not directly related to the numbers here. Does this make sense?
Okay,
So it's
thank
still
you.
so in a numeric, you're welcome. In a numeric coordinate system, basically you always start right at the left bottom and then you go up. So that's why we need to go up here. So yeah, that can be confusing. But the thing is, if I would use a factor here, there is no factor which lies exactly between 9 and 10. So the line, I would need to adjust the line exactly. So there might be other workarounds, but that's usually how I would do it. Yeah. Okay. And very quickly, just showcasing these. So if you want to add text, for example, to a scatter plot, the ggRepel package, it's pretty common and popular now. Always, I think it's the most one of the most used packages, extension packages for ggplot. So if you usually just plot a GM text, and even if you now adjust the exact placements, you will always have like overlapping labels here in that area, for example. So if you use the GM text, you can simply load the ggRepel package. And then there's a gm underscore text underscore repel function, which then has an algorithm to try at least to make non-overlapping labels. And this usually works very well. So this can be a true time saver and game changer. Another one I mentioned is the gmark family functions from the ggforce package. Here I'm using the circle one where I'm using a subset to label specific points of my data. So you see, these are pretty styled, polished. I didn't do much to style them. And you can even add the description. So you have a main bold title for your note and then even some additional information you can add. So check out the documentations of these packages, which I have linked in the overview list here. They cover you how to do these things. And another tip here, I never use it to be honest, it's the GG Annotate package, but it's I know people who used it. I usually share that because I know some people are like, well, I'm not going to sit down and try around with the coordinates. So here you can basically have an add-in. It's a small shiny app, if I'm correct. Yeah, should be. And then you can click on your graphic and place it where you want. And it returns the code, which is a bit too much. It's using GM text here, for example. I would use an annotate as I've shown you, but it works. So if you want to take a shortcut and you don't mind about like a bit of too much code for the thing you want to achieve, that's totally fine as well. And the last thing I want to talk about quickly is spaghetti plots. So it's late in the evening. Maybe you're going to dinner next. But what I'm talking about is these kind of chart types where we have lots of lines, which we call a spaghetti plot, especially if they're overlapping and intersecting all the time. And this is showing the data. Yes, it's kind of like a bit difficult and a bit high cognitive load in the sense of if I want to focus on one of these lines, it's hard to track them. The colors, there are a bit too many colors. Usually you should like have 4 to 6-ish colors, not 9 here. And also I have to go forward and back with the legend all the time, right? So I could use direct labels now to place some labels next to the lines, which likely would become a bit difficult in that area here and in this area maybe. You could give it a try with ggRepel. But there's a fantastic thing, and that's actually what made me use ggplot2 for the first time back then, is the possibility to create small multiples. And we also featured it in the course. So Edward Tufte wrote in his book 1990 that for a wide range of problems in the data presentation, if you want to compare some values, small multiples are the best design solution. And actually, ggplot, as you may know, makes it very, very simple to create these kind of small multiples. Um, so every time I present it in data visualization courses, and I think also other practitioners and also other discussions around that and blog posts around small multiples and these kind of topics, then say, yeah, well, now I can compare one of the lines, but it makes it much harder to really kind of like, well, I can see one of the lines, but it makes it much harder to compare 2 or 3 of these lines, right? This data set here might be a bit different because you see it's either early or late, the peak. But if you have a scatter plot, for example, it makes things very hard. And one cool thing you can do is basically add the shadow data. So we draw not an area now, we go back to a line chart here, and we draw all the other data as lines in this case. If you have a scatter plot, you could also draw the others as gray points, maybe smaller points in the background. Also here, I'm using different line widths. So you basically could maybe tweak a bit. So for presentations, always hard to get the gray right and the line width here. But basically, I see the main pattern of the name, but I can still basically see, okay, there's another one peaking at the same time. Which is it? And I can basically go to that name, which is next to it, which is Ashley. So these kind of things, compare it to maximum values, for example, like is this a high value already or not? If you have you could have a small multiple with like hundreds of subplots, for example, which might be hard to scan. And depending on the data you have, you might be still able to include this background data or shadow data. So how do you do this in ggplot? Oops, now I'm lagging again. Give me a moment. So I'm loading the baby names package here. This is also one example from the course where we have a subset. I'm now using only 6 for my code here. So it's a small data set where we now use only the year and the number of each name and the name. And if I want to draw just the line chart, basically I'm passing year to the x-axis and the count to the y-axis. And then I draw a GM line with one color, which is the same for all, and a bit higher or increased line width here. And then I can use the facet wrap function, where I can use this formula writing syntax with these tilde, circumflex, and the name. And then I force it into a 2-column layout here to match my slides. I think by default it would have 3 columns and 2 rows. Then I'm again addressing concatenation, remove, not sure why I did this, the clipping and the expansion. So the lines, there's no extra space to the left, to the right, to the top and the bottom of the lines. Which we'll fix in a second because now it's touching the Mary here, but this will look different in a minute. I'm going to address the scales argument here, which allows me to free either the X or the Y axis. So I can make them dependent on each subdata set. But I'm doing this here as a workaround, basically. There are other ways to do that, to add the year labels to all of my subplots. By default, ggplot only plots them at the bottom and the left. So here I'm saying, okay, for my X variable, it's anyway the same here for all columns. Oh, it's not. Okay, I shouldn't have done that and I wasn't careful enough. Okay, forget about this. We ignore it for now, but you can do that if you want, but we shouldn't here. So, okay, the problem here is now we have different time periods, which I actually didn't realize, or which we will not have in a later point when we add all the data again, because then we have the full date range, but not confusing you further. Just continue on with you how you would add the shadow data. So I'm just overriding the labels here and then make a nicer theme. So now we also don't have the problem with the Mary and the line here anymore. And now we have the actual data, which was the GM line, and we can basically draw behind that as we can add layer by layer. Oops. I can add the background data. So there are two tricks how you could do this. In previous versions of ggplot, you would need to have another data set, which basically the idea is that it doesn't contain the column you need to facet by. So basically, in the case that ggplot cannot find the column which it uses to split the data, it basically draws it every time. So that's a hack, more or less, where I'm using the rename function here for my data, where I say I want to rename my column name to group, and then it can't find it anymore, so it's drawing it every time. And then I just say it should be gray and have a thinner line. But in more recent data, ggplot versions, there is a new argument. So if you're using ggplot version 4, ggplot2 version 4, there is a new layout argument. So you basically add the same geom again. And then there's this layout option, which also allows you to address only one of the subplots here. But here we say fixed, which means we fix it across all the panels. So basically the gray lines are drawn in all 6 panels. And then this with the actual data, because it still has the name column, it's splitted by, it's only drawn for each of these. Okay, with this I want to close. I know this was kind of like a sprint. I also want to show you a few more things we cover in the course, but not going into detail here. So if you want to, you can also use facets to use multiple variables, for example, but it always repeats the same. So what we are going to cover, or what we are covering in our course, is these kind of nested facets or small multiples you can create with the facet underscore nested function from a package called, I'm putting that in the chat, ggh4x. It's also on the slides later on. So it makes a much nicer look. And yeah, wrapping up, I showed you quickly all the components of ggplot. So we basically have the data, we pass to a ggplot call, then specify which variables to visualize on our chart, then the layer with which geometry and statistical transformation. And then if we want, we can split it into small multiples with the facet functions. We can mess with the coordinate systems if you want to create circular ones or maps, for example. We can address the scale functions to change our axis and legend and colors used. And then we can do some polishing with the theme functions, with the complete themes and the modifications, where you can also go for the granular things. Sometimes, or usually, the layers are split in geometries and statistics, so you can treat them as one component or two. There are different definitions out there, I guess. So this is an overview of the packages I've presented today, plus the patchwork package. If you don't know that yet, feel free to explore it. I'm already over time, so definitely something I would love to cover here. But then for the next time, basically, we just released the lesson on that, but this is not free. But if you're already a member or decide to sign up, these are some of the examples we are covering here with patchwork, adding marginal distributions, or combining basically different plots with automatic tagging and so on. And Jan built a new widget here, which is the patchwork playground, where you can basically try around and use different syntax from very simple to more complex, which is, I was spending way too much time on that while preparing the lesson. So we took quite a moment to build the lesson, but pretty proud and hope people like it. So thank you very much for having me, for the invitation, and thanks for joining today. And as mentioned, this is the course page, and we still have early supporter discounts because we are currently still developing the course, which we hope to wrap up soonish. And happy to take your questions and feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cedric. It was a wonderful session. I learned so much. It felt like 1 hour is not enough. We needed more hours
Yeah,
to get everything that you have.
yeah,
So
sorry, it
are there
was
any
going fast.
questions? We can take questions for about 2-3 minutes because it's
Yeah,
past
sure.
6.
I'm fine if people are as well.
Any questions? Okay.
There's a
So
question.
okay. Kenneth, your hand is up.
Okay, thank you very much, Cedric. If I said, I think we require definitely more time
Yeah.
for such complex and wonderful session like this. So I was gonna ask, I mean, I've heard over and over and over again that R has um one of the best data visualization platforms there is among all other platforms. I wanted to ask, are there like color complexities that can be used in R to give you this kind of crystal clear coloring that you see in some of these outputs that you see in on the internet and like some glassy kind of colors? Are there ways that
Mhm.
R can give you those kind of colors? Because I in my current place of work, I try to bring visualizations, but when I see some other visualizations from some other guys and they are not using
Mhm.
R, it looks more classy. So is there a way R can do such kind of classy presentations?
So, so I think it's definitely first thanks all. So I think these things depend obviously on the style you have. So I find the ggplot very classy too, but I get where you're heading at, like basically having more like the dashboard Tableau feel maybe, or maybe like gradients or shadows and things like that. So there are a few packages. So it's not that I'm using them so much. So was already like trying to come up with their names. So there's definitely one which is called ggfx. There's definitely some more experimental ones which allow you to add also shadings and layer or merge different layers. There's ggblend as well. Trying to come up with the names as I speak. So check the ggplot extension universe, which is usually a good source for looking for these kind of things. But this might be exactly the use case where you then want to move to a graphic software to apply these changes, maybe like a glow layer or something like this. But there's also I think GG Blur which you could use. Adding that to the chat. Let's see. So quickly sharing the link as well, just searching for it so I can share it with you. So there are people who have registered their packages, their extension packages. So this is a good resource to look what all is out there because as usual with the ggplot packages, with our packages, there are so many, so it's hard to really find those which are interesting to yourself or get a good overview. Okay.
Thank you very much, Cedric.
Yeah, you're welcome. I saw another question. Uh,
Yeah, there's a question in the chat.
saving your plots. Yeah, that's a regular question. And definitely one of the more painful when using R and ggplot. So I'm using ggsafe for sure. So there are multiple approaches to get the size right. So that's definitely something which is frustrating. So you basically rely on the preview in our studio and you're iterating and tweaking everything and then you export and everything looks cramped or too small or whatever. So I think everyone who has used ggplot has been there at some point in the beginning. So the most basic workflow is basically, well, save it regularly to see how your changes influence, how it looks like. So decide on the figure width and figure height and then iterate on that. If you're using R Markdown or Quarto, especially in combination with RStudio, you can preview inline. So if you set figure width and figure height in your chunks, then it respects that. So basically, you don't have to go to your folder, open the image, and go back to RStudio. You can look directly at it in RStudio. Also, there's I think it's called the ggview package or one other package, which I have supported with, developed by it's the camcorder package, so I'm also posting that to the chat, which can help you to preview them as they would look like if you save them with ggSave. And then if you're using Positron already, I think they also have an option to display them in the pane with the actual figure width and height, and not as in RStudio where it resizes based on the window size, basically. Yeah, but that can be a bit of annoying. I covered that in my Posit conference workshop. So I don't have the link now available, but you may find it. So in the 2022 workshop, I was also talking a bit about, I think also in the first one, 2021, talking about how to save these. These slides are available publicly. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, the camcorder package, we need to update it. You're right. With the latest changes, I think we have some issues and haven't been that active on that side lately. I think DG View is the best alternative then, if you like that approach.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, Cedric. It was a pleasure having you
Th-
here. Thank you for
Thank you for
honoring
having
our
me.
invitation.
Sorry for the speed. I
So,
hope you will digest it.
no, go ahead. You can go ahead.
Sorry, I was just excusing. So I know it was speedy. It wasn't meant to really that you understand everything in detail now. I'm sending we will see how I can share the slides with you now later on. But I will make sure that you somehow will be available for you. And I think the question goes to you, but I think the recording will be made available as well.
Yes, the recording will be made available on our YouTube channel to be shared. If you registered, you will
Perfect.
get the email about the recording.
Perfect.
So thank you, everyone. I know it's past 6, at least Nigerian time. I don't know what it is where you are, but thank you for staying to the end. We'll, of course, for next month, we'll have another meetup, another webinar. That information will be passed across. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Cedric, once again.
It was a
And
pleasure.
have a lovely evening,
You too. Thanks for joining,
everyone.
everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.